All right, Jim, you're
All
on.
right. Well, thanks, Matt. It's good to be here and happy to be here. Going to tell you a little bit about my story, a lot about my story, and talk to you all. And I'm glad to see some of the younger guys in the house coming in. I wish back when I was your age that somebody could have given me this kind of talk and give you some background and tell you how to get from A to Z. And I certainly don't have all the answers, but it's been a hell of a ride. And a lot of it is you can chalk it up to luck, and that's a true statement because if anybody tells you that there's not some luck on their journey, they're full of it. And so certainly been a lot of it on my end. But at the same time, I think a lot of that luck was prearranged because of some of the things that I did throughout the years and how I positioned myself. And, and the brotherhood of SIGEP is a strong one. It's all the day we get activated and we become a brother. That's just not limited to your pledge class or the guys living in the house at that time. It extends to all you guys. And so you're as much of my brother as Tim Still is. And we're happy to be able to open up our screens and our telephone lines and our emails to help you out, to get to the places and make us proud and further the chapter. I mean, those are the ties that bind, and that's what the whole brotherhood had in mind when we joined. It wasn't just for 4 years. Hopefully it was 40 years and more. So let me get you started on the V story and my story. The older guys, Timmy and Rob and Mike Pavatsky, hello, Michael, know my story somewhat. They've kind of lost, Timmy hasn't, but they've kind of lost me through the years. But I grew up in Tucson. I grew up on 4910 East 28th Street, which is between Craycroft and Swan, and not a particularly nice part of Tucson. I grew up in a kind of a lower middle class beginning, and I had an extraordinary childhood, and it was extraordinary because of my father. He was a restaurateur in Tucson, got to be pretty well known restaurant. But he was two things that were a lot of things, but he was basically two things that just left a permanent imprint on me. And that first one was he was a very well-dressed, well-spoken guy and well-read. And ever since I was a little boy, he demanded, and you got to realize, as a Mexican kid growing up, I had a tough Mexican dad. And he demanded certain things of me. And a lot of times as a kid growing up, I thought, dad was an ass just because he was that hard on me. But I look back on it now, and I thank God every day he was. He made me understand some things that at a young age I wasn't willing to accept. But as I got older, man, it became crystal clear he was right. So the first thing he was this well-dressed, well-read, well-spoken, bilingual restaurateur in Tucson. And he had a lot of friends that were Jewish merchants, and they had a certain way of dressing back then that he was just convinced was the right way. And it was kind of an Ivy League look. And he was dead set he was going to make me dress that way. So that was the first half of it. Concurrently with that, my dad grew up wanting to be a cowboy. And he had a horse accident when he was 8 years old. He had a horse come over the top of him, broke his hip. And so he couldn't ride horses. But when he had me, I became his cowboy. And so my earliest memories were almost like I stepped out of a Brooks Brothers ad. And then in the afternoon, I turned into George Strait's kid. And I had this really different kind of childhood. And the biggest part of that was the cowboy thing. It was absolutely formative, cool, going down the road, hauling horses at, 6 years old, going to the next rodeo and living that lifestyle, which was a culture that taught me that yes, ma'am, and no, sir. And that, cowboys have a stubborn streak and they don't back up too often. And they keep their word and their handshakes are firm. And, growing up, that was just so formative in me. And it still is. The cowboy way is truly cool. And so growing up, I had this bifurcated life. I looked like a preppy kid in the morning. And that was really odd in the 60s, man. Everybody else was wearing 501s and fry boots. And here comes me wearing, topsiders and loafers and khakis and a white starched button down. I'm 7 years old. And in the afternoon, I'm a cowboy. And so it was kind of, I thought my dad was just being too hard on me, just let me be. But he kind of knew what he was doing. So we moved from 28th Street. We moved over to Broadway, Wilmot area. Dad's business was starting to flourish. Went to Sewell Elementary School and then Fickett Junior High and then Saguaro High School. And one of the things you guys are going to hear about today is I've just been so lucky on the stops I've made. And I've gotten noticed by the right people to help advance my career. But really the first stop besides the rodeo success was going to Saguaro High School. I happened to go at a time that was just magical. And that's just serendipity, man. That's just luck. And I got there and it was a great athletic school and a lot of school spirit. And we was surrounded by some guys that were just, tremendous athletes. And I was able to go in that milieu and be part of it. I mean, I got there and Skip Pete had just joined the school. Gibb Seibert was a stud. John Missler was there when I first started. Brad Baker was all state in football and baseball. Saguaro was just this kind of this melting pot of athletics and freaks and stoners and just, late 70s type of kids, but it was also cool. So going through the rodeo thing, I sucked at, for the first 6-7 years, but I turned 11 or 12, I got to be pretty good. And then I got to be really good at it. And it got to be where I thought this could be something that certainly I could be professional at. And I started setting my sights on that. But at the same time, throughout that whole process, the city kid in me was reading a lot. And I was reading a lot about finance. I was reading a lot about success stories of businessmen. I was certainly reading a lot about sports. I was reading a lot about life around me. I mean, everything I could get my hands on, I read, whether that be Sports Illustrated, Forbes, Fortune, Time, Newsweek, Rolling Stone, Sporting News, the Roper Sports News, Rodeo Sports News, the paper every day, the Wall Street Journal. Here I was, this 14-year-old kid, just reading everything I could get my hands on. And you'll hear me talk about that in a little bit, just how important that was in my development and still is. Reading is absolutely essential if you want to be successful. So I went to Saguaro, was an undistinguished student. I think that's being very gracious about it. I was a bad student. Decided to run for senior class president my senior year. I had gotten along with everybody throughout the first 4 years. Didn't play sports because I was rodeoing, but ended up running for senior class president against this gal who was uber organized, Carol Davis. We put up one sign at Saguaro. If RJ is on the call, he knows there's a walkway coming down from the second story to the first story going to the lunch area. And I put one sign up there that said, "This escuela needs Valenzuela." And just one. And won the election and became senior class president at Saguaro. I was the worst senior class president in the history of the school. There's no doubt. The second day of school, we had an assembly in the auditorium. It was at that school that day, second day of senior year. I said, tomorrow's a ditch day. And the whole senior class the next day was up on Mount Lemmon. And thank God nobody got killed because I probably would have been put in jail. I knew I was a bad senior class president because I had student council as a class and I got a C in it. And I'm pretty sure I'm the only person ever to get a C in student council. It's an automatic A. The administration hated me. I giggled and laughed my way through my senior year of high school. Something else happened that year that was just incredibly impactful for all of the guys that are our age. This is 1979. A movie came out that year that just hit us all. And that movie was Animal House. And so we're in high school and we see this movie that's portraying the Greek system as being this just out of control, absolute barrel of fun. And I think we all said, okay, I'm going to go do this. My sister was a Gamma Phi. She's a couple years older than me. So I had somewhat of a little bit of background on what was going on at the U. I got a scholarship to go rope at the U, a small one. And I was going to go to join the rodeo team and go continue the rodeo. But before school started, I decided to check out this Rush thing. So back then, I think it started on a Wednesday. And so I walk in and here's this, I got a pair of, I remember today, I don't know how I remember, but I had a pair of seersucker pants on, a starched white button-down shirt, walk into the SIG-Up house. It's like 4 in the afternoon. I have no clue what's about to happen. Walk in, and the first guy I meet is this just stud dude by the name of Mike Holquist. And Mike somehow knew who I was. And so he took me to the side and said, you come with me. And so my first day in Rush, I'm hanging out with this guy on the golf team at the U of A, this stud dude. And he, basically like, you don't need to see the kitchen. You don't need to see the back room. Come to my room. And I walk in his room and there's a bunch of guys in there drinking beer and having fun, doing some other stuff. But, it was college. And so they're having a great time. I see these kind of beady eyes peering through some vents. It's Zinger. And so, I'm like going, oh my God, what is this place about? So I, till the sun went down, it was kind of this formal Animal House, meet this guy, meet that guy. And then the sun went down and all of a sudden out came the kegs, up went the music, out came the jungle juice. And then here came the girls. And that first day, I knew it was going to be a sig up. I'm like, oh my God, this place is unbelievable. And so I went to the Fiji house and I went to the Sigma New house. So the only two other houses that I visited. Joined SIGAP. They were nice enough to let me join. We lived in this shithole, 1420 North Vine. It was not this, gleaming house on the hill. It was this gross smelling, rundown place that had more damn spirit than any place I could imagine. It was a magical place and a magical time to be there. I just got full on lucky to join the SIGAP house at that time. There was so much success that was happening around me. We were all, knuckleheads at the time, young kids, but you could tell some of these guys were going to make it big. You could just feel it from them. And it wasn't like these guys were always just studying. They were just normal dudes, but there was something about them that just sparkled. And so I joined and quit the rodeo team. I didn't quit the rodeo team. I just stopped going to rodeos. Lived in the SIGAP house first year with a guy by the name of Seth Bowen, good looking dude from back east, on the U of A tennis team, good with the ladies, good roommate. He was a good guy to have, pledge year. And so went through that. Seth died a couple of years ago, rest in peace. And he and I became friends and had just had a marvelous first year. I couldn't ask for more from the SIGAP house. Second year, something happened and it was really kind of formative for me. I had made some really good friends the first year, but the second year, it came time for Rush and we did that. And there's two guys going through Rush that year that just kind of changed the arc of my life a bit. The first was a guy who said, need a roommate. And I had an opening in my room. And I said, why don't you live with me? And that guy turned out to be Dan Hicks. And Danny was this kid I'd seen play basketball at Sabino High School. He was remarkable because I'd never seen anybody's cheeks get so red when they exercised. And the kid could play hoops, and I was a hoop fanatic at the time. I played 3 or 4 hours of ball every day. I just loved it. And Danny could play, man. Danny could shoot like Seth Curry. There's no doubt about it. The guy was just as pure a shooter as I've ever seen. And Danny and I fell in together. And another guy came with him that were friends at Sabino, and that guy was Tim Still. And the three of us just became inseparable. And it was really at that time that my SIGAP experience just came into full blown. It was really a time where deep, deep, deep friendships were cemented. We had no idea where we were heading in life. Danny couldn't have called his shot, even if he tried. I certainly couldn't have called mine. Timmy kind of had an inkling he was going to stay in Tucson, I think, but we didn't know. We were just young guys just trying to get after it. And around that were other people that were just equally as impressive. We just weren't as close of friends. And it was like, I see Dan Adamson on the call. You could tell Danny was going places. And, there was Steve Gooder, the funniest human being I've ever met in my life. Rest in peace, Steve. And Mike Eller. And there was just Bingo and David Sobel, just guys, good dudes, man. And SIGAPs that were just, you loved and you still love after all these years. So the SIGAP experience was formative. It was deep, it was meaningful, and it was something that I thank God happened to me. It was just that good. And those ties that bind all those years later still bind. And you'll be lucky, guys, the young guys, keep your boys in mind because those friendships will not fade. I don't see Dan and Tim nearly as much as I'd like to, but when I do see them, it's like we saw each other 5 minutes before. that good of a relationship. And you just can't duplicate that. At least I haven't been able to as life went on. Those guys are my boys. So I graduated. Luckily, you guys should know that I graduated. I was probably the worst student in the history of SIGAP. Maybe Chris Ralston kind of maybe might have been in the same league. I graduated with the 2.25. I was a horrible student, but I was just reading everything I could get my hands on. And I've always been really aware of the world around me. And so college was really, deeply formative because I got to see different things and I got to really internalize them. One of the great things I got to see, just so you guys know, is we were there when Dirtbags opened. How cool is that? The institution that Dirtbags was, we were amongst the first people to go in. Truly a fun time in our lives. So I graduated. I got a call from my dad right after I graduated. He said, put on a tie and come down to the office. He's at the restaurant. And I walked in and there was a young guy sitting there. He was probably a couple years older than me. And he said, sit down. I want you to meet somebody. And I said, okay. And the guy was a guy by the name of Ernie Garcia. And Ernie is now the richest man in the state of Arizona and probably the richest man the state has ever minted. He's worth about 15 billion. He was 24, 25 years old, and my dad called me into his office. My dad was going to make an investment with him in one of his limited partnerships. But really, my dad was there to introduce me to him and try to get me a job. Well, it worked. And Ernie offered me a job, and I had to go get a Series 7's license, which, kind of validated I wasn't stupid. I just wasn't a good student. It was a hard test, and I passed it. But I got thrown in with Ernie, and I was grossly unprepared for going to sell out, $150,000 limited partnerships based on tax benefits. And it wasn't because I was dumb. It's just I didn't have the confidence or the seasoning to go do it. If I had to go do it now, I'd kill at it. I mean, I know what I was doing, and I talked to people that are peers, and I knew I could be successful. But at the time, at 22, man, what do you know, right? I mean, you're tough. You're trying to find the way, and you're trying to talk millionaires into giving you hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so I wasn't successful at it. I went from there for a quick stint with Phil Amos over at Tucson Realty and Trust. Same kind of gig, wasn't good at it. And that's really right at the end of that when things started happening to me and for me. I met a guy by the name of Tim Sprague, another young guy, he was about 30 at the time, who had graduated from the University of Oklahoma Law School and was in Phoenix developing real estate. And our paths crossed. And Tim said, why don't you move to Phoenix? I'll give you a job and I'll buy you a new car if you move here. And I, was 22, 23. I'd had enough of Tucson. I needed to get to a bigger town. And certainly that new car offer was something that at that age, you take pretty seriously, man. I'm going to go get a new car. So moved to Phoenix, moved here, started out in commercial real estate. It was something I completely understood. It wasn't deep and, and dank like the securities industry. And so I started on the development and real estate brokerage path and initially met with some success. And then not long after I got here, something happened that guys my age will understand, you guys don't, but there was a titanic shift in the real estate market in Phoenix in the mid 80s because of a thing called the Resolution Trust Company, which came before it because the savings loan industry, the rules changed and they imploded. Savings loans were these pseudo bank things running around, hybrids that had made speculative investments in real estate after the law changed. And then the law changed to say, no, that's not what we had in mind. And it wiped these billion-dollar institutions out. The business of Phoenix at that time was real estate. And that change in the banking laws stopped the real estate market here dead, just stopped it. If you guys remember 08 when things stopped, well, it was equally as abrupt back in the mid 80s when the RTC, when the savings and loans imploded and the FDIC took control of them through the RTC. So as luck would have it, the last deal I did was with a guy who was a member of the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors. And I don't know why, the guy saw something in me. And the guy, Maricopa County is this very large county, the 5th biggest in America, encompassing all of Phoenix and metro area. And the guy was one of 5 votes and sold him the property and with the closing. And he said, you ever thought about politics? No, I don't know anything about politics. He goes, well, I'm looking for an executive assistant I think you just might be good at it. And, you know, at the time it was like 32 grand a year. And I thought, you know, that's a hell of a lot better than waiting for the next commission check, which is not coming in the real estate business. So I jumped in. Prior to that, I'd started dating a gal while I was with Tim Sprague, now my wife, who was she was a surgical intern at Maricopa Medical Center, a hospital that the county owned. And she was then about to transition into becoming an anesthesia resident. She's a medical doctor. And so that's just happenstance. And, you know, it's just dating a gal. She's going to be a doctor. She is a doctor. She's getting her training, finishing her training. And I just happened to get a job with one of the 5 votes that control the institution of which she's doing her residency. Just luck. So I joined into the county, this really, you know, it's a big municipal government, at a really high perch. And it was a fascinating experience for a guy of my age because I had a hall pass to go anywhere I wanted in the state politically. The doctors at the medical center quickly realized that one of their residents was dating this guy's executive assistant, and they started buying me lunch. And they started telling me about an office building that was stuck on the campus of the hospital. And, you know, just, do you think maybe you could help us a little bit politically doing that, getting it unstuck? So I did. I got it unstuck very quickly. And the building got built. It was no problem for me at the perch I was in. And the doctors were just very grateful. And it was, you know, good leverage for me because this gal I was in love with, you know, was one of their residents, and she was a little bit protected given my position. So the relationship between the doctors and myself became very, very warm. I was there for 2 years. I left because I just couldn't stand government anymore. It's this weird thing where you look behind the curtain and it's all about money. It doesn't really matter philosophy. It's about money and getting reelected. That's the #1 rule of politics. Just remember, it's getting reelected. So I left. I had a buddy of mine go away to Harvard Business School. And while he was at Harvard, he and another guy who was a Baker Scholar at the business school befriended Bill Seidman, who was running the FDIC, which had complete control of the RTC, which had all of the S&L assets. And somehow these guys talked, they want to, you know, they talked their way into winning a tranche of assets, about $500 million worth, that was being rebrokered back into the Phoenix community and the Arizona community. And these Harvard MBAs were smart guys, but they didn't know jack about politics or real estate. And so they said, come on, let's go. And so I joined them. And a company called the Southwest Harvard Group. So I was there for about 2 months. One day the phone rang, and it was the chief of surgery at the medical center where my wife was still working. This just stud dude, full professor of surgery at the Mayo Clinic, full professor of surgery at the University of Arizona, and a world-class vascular surgeon and the chief of surgery at the medical center. And he said, I need to buy you lunch. And at that lunch, he sat me down and said, I got a proposition for you. Yeah, what's up? He goes, we have 300 doctors at the medical center. They're contracted with Maricopa County by division, by group. So the surgeons have their own contract, anesthesiologists, the pediatricians, the psychiatrists. There's 300 docs, it's a big group. He said, they're playing us. We want to go into one group, one big, massive group. Do you think you could get it past the board of supervisors? I said, yeah, I know I can. He said, if you do that, you become the executive director of the company. So I quit the Southwest Harvard Group, and 18 months later, I'm the founding executive director of the Maricopa Faculty Association, and we're doing about $80 million a year in business. That was the big break. That was the one that catapulted me. And it was just a matter of being at the right place at the right time to the right guy. And then being able to have the confidence that I understood that the politics that lay before me, that put the steering wheel in my hands for the company. It was Jim Malone and I running the company. And this was a very successful company that's still very successful. So I was in that chair for 6 years. It was my finishing school. Healthcare is this deep, hard to understand, chaotic business. And at the time, with Hillary Care and capitation rates and HMOs and all these things that are changing the business, man, it was a headache. And all of these 300 docs, I'm talking about Harvard grads, Johns Hopkins, man, these guys were studs, man. And here's this 28, 29, 30-year-old guy running the company. And all of them wanted my job. You know, they don't want to practice medicine. It's kind of like the athlete rapper thing. All rappers want to be athletes and all athletes want to be rappers. Well, all doctors want to be businessmen, you know, and the businessmen don't want to be doctors. So they wanted my chair. So for 6 years, successfully navigated those treacherous waters. And then it came time to leave. My wife was then in private practice. She had finished a fellowship in critical care. She was an anesthesiologist. And she decided to go into private practice. So I left, and the doctors took care of me. They set me up with a big office, a small office, but a nicely appointed office in downtown Phoenix, and outfitted it for me, bought me a Macintosh and a dial-up modem back in those days. This is 98. And compensated me well and said, stay away from the competition. So I started looking for opportunity. I was married. My wife was successful. We started having kids. We have 4 of them now. We were 3 into it. And I started looking for, okay, I want to own my own company, man. I want to steer my own boat. I don't want doctors. I want this to rest on my shoulders. And so I started looking. I hired an investment banking firm to start looking for me, and didn't find anything. One day, I was looking through the Wall Street Journal, and there was an ad for a men's clothing company. I told you part about growing up with clothes, out of Baltimore, called Joseph A. Bank Clothiers, that was looking for somebody to franchise Arizona and California. And Arizona would be fine. I wanted to get my hands on California because the market opportunity, I thought there was just be, you know, I don't know, 30 stores, 50 stores. I don't know, it could be big. So I started taking it very seriously. They put a couple of guys chaperoning me, go across the country, do due diligence. And one day we found ourselves, this was early morning, 10 o'clock, 9 o'clock, in Knoxville, Tennessee, right in the shadow of Neyland Stadium. We climbed out of these guys' car, rent a car, and walk into a Joe Bank store. There was a barbershop next to it. And I sit in the parking lot, and I just froze. And what I froze about was that my little boy at the time was 3 or 4, and I didn't have anywhere to take him to go get a haircut that could replicate anything that I had with my dad. And those were so meaningful times to go to the barbershop on a Saturday with my old man. How cool to go see a football game or sneak a peek at a Playboy when you're 7 or hear some word you'd never heard before because they're cussing in the barbershop. A barbershop had this own spirit about it that was just cool to me. And they sucked in 1998. Whatever they had become, they had lost it. They had lost all of their nostalgic equity. They had just become kind of like shoe repair places, this place that nobody wanted to go to. And so these barbershops were just wretched. And yet in Knoxville, Tennessee, and not a particularly nice barbershop, in a parking lot, I thought, damn, man, there's an opportunity. Somebody's going to take a barbershop and do to it what Starbucks did to a coffee shop. They're going to put it on Main Street. They're going to give it some style. They're going to wrap it in some type of brand. And I didn't know what the brand was. And I didn't know anything about barbershops. I just knew how cool. We all got to get our hair cut. So I walked into the Joe Bank store, completely distracted. The next day we flew to Baltimore to go meet with the CEO to go do the franchise deal. And that night, the 2 guys that were with me hit me up for like a quarter of the equity and didn't want to pay for it. This was going to be their sweat equity for chaperoning. So I didn't say anything to these guys. I just kept my mouth shut, walked into the CEO's office and said, he's like, he has these papers all filled out, ready to sign. He said, you ready? And I said, no, I'm not doing the deal. Let me tell you why. I said, your 2 boys here hotboxed me last night for a piece of the action without paying me for it. And I got a partner and I sleep with her every night. So I'm out. That's how you guys do business. I'm out. So I climbed on a plane, flew back to Arizona, walked in our house. Wife said, are we in the clothing business? And I said, no, but what about barbershops? And I swear to God, her eyebrow arched. She's like, barbershops? Yeah, you know, I think, you know, we could take something like out of The Godfather and, you know, make it really cool and put it in the right neighborhoods and have real barbers with uniforms. You know, they're licensed like doctors. We can put them in white smocks like doctors and connotate they're professionals. And we could build a business that I think guys will come to 12 times a year. And if we're really good, they'll bring their kids and their dad. And maybe we can even shave them. She goes, shave? Who gets a shave at a barbershop? And I'm like, you're right. It's 1998. Everybody, you know, AIDS is around. Everybody's scared of shaving. But in my world, my thinking, hell, you go to a barbershop to get a shave. And so I started down this path in that little office the doctor set up for me. First day, I remember, it's like I'm talking to you guys. Spreadsheet, revenues, men's haircut. What the hell, how much do they cost? I don't know, 16 bucks. At the time, you know, barbershop haircuts were like 10 bucks, 12 bucks. I wanted this to be a nice barbershop, 16 bucks. Okay, kids haircuts. I don't know. Got to be less than the, you know, smaller head, got to be less than that, so 12 bucks. What about the shave? I was too dumb, ignorant to know that nobody was shaving. I wanted to shave. 20 bucks. Shoe shines. Okay, and that was it. It was like in and out had played with my thinking. I wanted a really small menu, and I wanted to get really good at those really small menu things. Haircuts, shaves, and shoe shines. That's how V started. Pretty much how it is today. So I kept tweaking on that spreadsheet. I didn't know if it was going to make any money. It was a pro forma. You know, all I knew is this itch was getting more and more profound. And I started going and trying to figure out what would it be like and how would it look and how would it feel? What would I call it? And it was something that was, you know, extremely lonely, just to be honest with you. Because you're stuck in this office having these dreams, waiting on your, you know, on this dial-up modem every 30 seconds, another page loads. And you're like, you know, this tedium. But I felt I was onto something. So I started traveling and trying to look for these barbershops, went to New York and other big cities. And I didn't find what I was looking for. They were gone, man. And so I kind of noticed the rarest of things in 1998. I noticed a hole in the American retail marketplace. Why me? I have no clue. So I realized either I'm really smart or really dumb because somebody's done it and it hasn't worked. And it was pretty much split. My dad thought I was nuts for trying to get in the barbershop business. He's like, are you sure about this? So I started using my sense of style. I called up the Baseball Hall of Fame. And I said, I'm doing this barbershop. It's for fathers and sons. I want to go in your archives. Guys, I know a lot about sports. And so I have like these 12 pictures that I want to get out of your archives. Will you do it for me? And they're like, sure. So like a month later come these 16 by 20 photographs. They're like 10 bucks a piece from Cooperstown of these really obscure, really cool, really rare photographs. And I, you know, found horse racing pictures and boxing pictures and guys, you know, golfing pictures that nobody else had. I didn't want to have the pictures that you would find at Applebee's on my wall. I wanted pictures where a father and son could walk in and the dad knew enough about sports to say, who's that? And the dad would say, well, that's Bob Beamon jumping 29 feet at the 68 Olympics. A seminal moment in track and field. And those were the pictures that meant something to me. And so I threw my heart in this little barbershop that popped up at 48th Street in Indian School. And it was not particularly, it's still there. It's not particularly well located. You can't see it from the street, but it's a great neighborhood. And I hired barbers and I found barber chairs and I got lucky because there was a barber chair mechanic that had just moved to Phoenix. What are the chances of that? Called it V's because Jimmy V was trademarked by the Valvano Foundation out of North Carolina. Everybody else called me V, but it was originally going to be called Jimmy V's. And I opened up. It was a lot more work and a lot more stress than anything I did in the doctor business because it was me. I didn't have secretaries and I didn't have all the luxuries a big corporation could bring to me and make it easy on me. It was me. And it was scary, man. You know, the fear of failure is a big motivator. And so I was running scared. I did it all for cash because I didn't know if it was going to work. I had no clue. I just knew that after it got built out, that what I had set out to achieve happened. And that was, it was a little movie set that was masquerading as a barbershop. And it looked like something we pulled out of a Scorsese film. So we opened up. I had a friend of mine that was a member of the Thunderbirds here in Phoenix, the guys who put on the golf tournament, a life member, older guy. And he did something that was just completely verboten. He gave me the list of Thunderbirds and all their contact information. And so I figured that was the right group of guys to get interested in this really cool new barbershop. And so I invited them all. The big chief called me up the day the invitations went out and said, how in the hell did you do this? And I said, don't worry, I'll never do it again. But they showed up when I opened up. And so the early influencers showed up. Invited some of my friends. They showed up, opened up in November of '99. Nothing like it anywhere in the country. And it was a miserable failure for the first couple of months. Nobody knew what it was. Spent my time going to Carter Men's store saying, hey, send your guys over here, get shoe shines. I noticed a Ford dealer was giving away movie tickets for test drives for F-150s. Took up a bunch of free shoe shine, free shave cards. Next week, our logo was in the newspaper for Sunday test drives. Come get a shave at V's. Nobody was doing it. Eventually, they caught on. And it caught on a Saturday, and I was there. And we'd done like 5 haircuts. It was 10 in the morning, and all of a sudden, these little kids come running into the barbershop saying, you're the talk of the soccer fields. And dude, I'm like telling you, like 10 minutes later, the place was packed. And it stayed packed. Did a second store at Kierland Commons, this kind of upscale environment in Scottsdale, outdoor mall. I didn't know if it was going to work. It was expensive. Signed a 3-year lease with a bunch of 3-year options because I didn't want to, I didn't know if it was going to work. They let me do it, and the place doubled the revenues of the first year. And that's kind of when I knew. I didn't know what I was going to do with these. I had a couple of raging successes on my hands. I mean, these were unusually busy businesses, and nothing to compare it with in the barbershop business anywhere in the country. And so one day I was at the shop at Kierland, and it got a knock on the door. I was in the back office. I spent half the morning at one shop, half the afternoon at the other shop. Open the door, and there's a little short guy standing there. And the first question he asked me is, are you a barber? I said, nope, never cut a hair in my life. He said, hi, my name's Doug Ducey. I'm CEO of Cold Stone Creamery. I love your business. Would you be interested in franchising? And I'm like, how many stores you got, Doug? He goes, I got 465 right now. We're gonna top out about 1,200. Located here, located here. All you gotta do is bring the concept over. We'll load it on the conveyor belt at Cold Stone. I think we can do this again, what we did with Cold Stone. You guys should know Doug Ducey is now the governor of Arizona. So I did a JV with Doug. I gave him a lot of ups. I structured it so that eventually he could own the majority of the company, and I figured I'd go mope that decision on my yacht if he got me to 1,200 units. So 2 months into the deal, Doug said, why don't you come to the office? Went to the office, walked in. He said, I got some great news. I go, what's that, Doug? He says, I merged with another company. You what? Who's the other company? He said, it's called Kahala Corp. I'm like, what the hell's a Kahala Corp? He said, don't worry, I'm going to be running it. You're in good shape. We're gonna knock it out of the park, you and I. I'm like, well, what's their biggest holdings? What's their biggest brand? He said, Blimpie Subs. I'm like, oh God. So I went to bed with Cold Stone, which was kind of a complimentary experiential brand. And I woke up the next morning with Blimpie Subs. So Doug, I went and talked to the guy he merged with. He laughed and said, Doug's not the CEO. We're about to bounce his ass out of here. And they did. And I was left with these guys that were just a step above the mafia. And so I had 4 stores at the time. They had about $1 billion in revenue. And I had to play defense against these idiots for a year to get my company back. And I got it back. I mean, I'm sure they don't like me too much, but I wasn't kind of that cowboy mentality. I was not taking a step back. Do you want to fight? Let's go. But I'm not stepping back. And eventually they grew tired of it and gave me my company back. I had to pay for it, but I got it back. And when I got it back, it's 2008. And it was right in the middle of Bear Stearns going out of business and Lehman Brothers failing. And the world was failing financially. And so I moved back to the back of the barbershop, the original barbershop. I had 3 people working for me. I said, okay, this might be a blessing in disguise. We know that we don't want to be Cold Stone. We know that we don't want to grow this thing So it's a boutique. We want to be proud of every store that we do. I have no longer this ambition to have 1,200 stores. I think it's a perverse ambition because you hurt people when you get that big because you crowd these stores too close to each other. I said, I just want to be proud of the brand. And I think this concept could last for many, many years if we do this correctly. And that's what we've been doing since. We got 50 stores. We got about another 25 to go open right now. We've got, I think it'll eventually top out at a couple hundred. And we're exactly the same company that when we started back in 1998. The philosophy hasn't changed an iota. It's the same. Back at sitting in that office back in 98, I kind of had an inkling that this internet thing was going to be big. And I was kind of enthused that haircutting was so mundane that I don't think computers are going to be able to take it over. And that hunch was right. We're sitting on a service that you need humans for. The hard part is the service end of it, the yes sirs and no ma'ams and thank yous and cleanliness and how you treat people. I mean, it's kind of hard to screw up my haircut. Look at me, I had the same haircut for 59 years. And so if we could just do that and treat people all right, I think our ability to last long into the future is there. And I think it's, it's a wonderful thing to think about. It's hard to pull off to try to get that culture right, to allow that dream to continue. But we work at it every day. Have an unbelievable staff. We've got this cool little boutique franchise that's just honest, treats people right. We've got some franchisees that are headaches, but we love them because they put their money up. We treat them like family. Doesn't mean we like them all the time, but it means we treat them right. And so we do the best we can for them. I'm a big fan of Warren Buffett. He's got a famous quote that says, I tap dance to work every day. And kind of what I do. I tap dance to work. I've got a cool concept that worked. And, the people that surround me are just totally bought in, and I don't have to worry about their allegiance or their loyalty. They're in. And so we continue to just move forward, and all that started with a guy, with a 225 from the Sig Ep house in Tucson. And, I'm probably the only guy in the state that, worked with Ernie Garcia and Doug Ducey, two of the more famous guys around in the state. Lucky enough to live with Dan Hicks, probably the most famous Sig Ep of all time. Any chapter. Name somebody who's a Sig Ep who is more famous than Danny.
Hey, Jim, let me ask you a question. I'm going to ask you a couple questions and then see if we can, anybody else that wants to ask questions, you can basically just send them a chat through and I'll call your name, but I'm going to start with two questions.
Sure.
One is, would you do anything different if you went back to college again? Knowing
Absolutely.
what you know now, would you change anything?
Absolutely. I'd have studied, man. I know now and have the confidence now to know I have the brain power where I could have gone to B school somewhere. I've read a ton about finance. I know I could have worked on Wall Street. I know that now. And I regret not doing that. I did not make that mistake with the kids. My wife wouldn't let me. And I'll tell you a bit about my wife in a second, but I would change that. I wouldn't change anything about Sig Ep. I mean, it was magical. It was just nothing I would change. And I don't look at anybody else's school with envy. I was at the right place at the right time with the right guys. But I wish I'd have studied more. It's important.
I've heard that one before. Okay, I got one other question, then I've also got a question that's come in. So for the young guys that maybe are thinking about, they got that entrepreneur bug and they want to go start a business, what's three advice?
Okay. I'm going to give you 5 because I wrote them down because this is what I really wanted to get across to the young guys tonight.
Okay.
And it's really, it worked for me. It'll work for you. Number 1, pick your spouse carefully. You will do no bigger deal in your life than get married. None. And it could be hell on you if you chose the wrong one. I got married to a gal who was a Pi Phi at Indiana University, never got a B in college. She was a biology major, never got a B in med school, completely different than I. Man, I hit it out of the park. She's a trauma anesthesiologist. This story doesn't come true without her. And the best thing about her, she's an unbelievable mom. choose your wife carefully. It is absolutely the biggest deal you'll ever do. Number two,
Unbelievable person.
what's that?
Unbelievable person.
She's an unbelievable person. Best thing I ever did in my life. Number two, exercise. I don't care what you do, man. I don't care who you are. Stress of life and business and kids and college, for your kids in high school, and anxiety and social media, I'm telling you, it gets ramped up as you get older. You don't see it coming, but I wouldn't be here if I didn't exercise every day. I ran for 20 years and now I row every single day. It is absolutely a key to my success, is being able to go sweat. I mean, hardcore sweat for 50 minutes to an hour every day. Clears your head, makes you a nicer person, allows you to eat, allows you to be fair. Exercise. Never forget reading about Tim Geithner and Henry Paulson when the whole financial system was melting down. Every day, Tim Geithner woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning and went and ran. The world is melting down, and this guy had to go. The Treasury Secretary had to go and exercise. My wife, she gets up at 4 o'clock every morning, swims about 4,000 yards. Think about that in the wintertime. Every day. She's 60, man. She's tough as nails. Number three, read. Read, read, read. I've yet to meet a really educated person that's not well read. And I'm not telling you got to read everything. And I still read it. I still read Rolling Stone so I can understand the music, the culture around me. It's my job to understand culture now. These is a culture play, right? I got to understand the world. Read Forbes, read books, read about Churchill, read about finance, read about Roberto Clemente. Read, man. It's the key to everything. I'm telling you, as a young guy, you're looking for a way to get noticed and a way for people to accept you, and that for that door to open. If you're well read, somebody who is as well will understand that by how you converse with them, and it will open that door. I am convinced of it. If you just sit there and all you know about is Facebook or Instagram or TikTok, that dude's going to be like, you're one in, I got 10 million of you. But if you can go down and that guy, and you got to do your research, and that guy was a minor league baseball player playing for the Diamondbacks, and the minor league system and where he played, that guy's going to be like, how'd you know that? Certainly for a Mexican kid, from Tucson, cowboy, for me to sit down and talk to somebody about, Pickett, Lehman Brothers. I'm telling you, those doors open, and that's why I got noticed, man, because I could speak about it. You got to read. Fourth, and this is important, you got to learn to dress, and you got to learn to groom. You'll get noticed. Man, maybe it's because my skin's brown. I got noticed because of how I dress and how I groom. But it'll work for you too, man. You can't show up thinking, I don't know if I'm going to take my earring out for this meeting. Take it out. Show up like you own the place with confidence. And everybody sitting in a CEO seat, everybody sitting in a corner office digs the turned on young guy because it reminds them of them. That's who sits in those offices. And so you got to learn to speak, you got to learn to dress, and you got to learn to groom. It's important. And then lastly, this is completely, listen to this because it will ruin your life if you don't. Live beneath your means. Okay, so you're going to go, and let's say you do everything right and you get this job, and first thing you're like, I'm going to go get a Porsche. I'm telling you, man, don't do it. Don't do it. Lower your sights. Be modest. Instead of spending the money on the Porsche, give you some great advice. Call Timmy Stilb and buy some life insurance because it'll never be cheaper than at your age. Swear to God. Look back on it now. It's cheap when you're 25. Okay. If your wife wants to go live in the big house in the country club, resist the temptation. Maybe you picked the wrong gal because it brings nothing but heartache. And if you've lived beneath your means, you can live a wonderful life and sleep at night and have confidence that no matter what life throws at you, we're good. And that's where I'm at. I'm good, man. I don't worry about, my $8,000 mortgage payment. I don't have a mortgage payment.
Good.
And I don't live on the fanciest street. We live in a very nice street and belong to the country club and have nice kids. We had 4 kids. maybe the ultimate extravagance that we've done, and maybe the best thing we've ever done, the thing that makes me happiest. All the kids went to private school. My son went to Notre Dame for college. He's in med school now. Oldest daughter went to the Kelley School of Business in Indiana. She's in graduate school at UW in Seattle now. Bella just graduated from NAU. And then our youngest, Helena, is a sophomore at Boulder at University of Colorado. We gave our kids their education. That's the greatest gift I could give them.
That's great. So I got a couple other questions that have come in here. So what's the key to hiring the right employees? Question one. And then how do you create, communicate, and manage the culture?
Well, finding the right employee is just, a lot of times it's luck. I mean, you got to notice something in somebody to say, I trust that person. I'm going to give them more and more responsibility. Now, you can't give it to them day one. They have to earn it. And then, the culture has to, at least V's culture came because I think all these people respected me. They wanted to please me. And that's a wonderful, thing to watch where, they're trying to please you. And they weren't pandering to me. They were trying to move the brand forward. I told them, you're allowed to make mistakes, and they did. But if that mistake is of the head instead of the heart, we got a problem. They don't make those mistakes. So I trust them to go spend our money. And yeah, they still make those mistakes, but I live with it. I know their intentions are pure. We all make mistakes. I don't have all the answers. And so I have to ride with these people, and I gladly do. Now that we have 7 people at the corporate office, pretty sure all 6 of them would take a bullet for me. And I'd probably take a bullet for them. And that's how you build culture and team and trust and success.
Great. So the next question here is actually from Jeff Wright, who is chapter president. What is your decision-making process? Do you have a group of close friends you talk to? Do you consult with your wife, read about the topic, or all of the above?
No, the decision-making process is, I'll be on the rowing machine, Matt, and I'll be 7,500 meters into it on a 10K row. And all the time I'm thinking about, okay, what do I do with this one? And I got 40 minutes to figure it out. And I'm not concentrating on the pain, or I can't breathe, or how much my shoulders are hurting, trying to figure out what's the decision process. And it's completely up to me. I don't call Timmy, I don't call Danny, I don't ask my wife. She's got plenty of stress in her life, in the operating room. So it's up to me. Visa's gonna rise and fall on me. And I don't have all the answers. I mean, I never ask my franchisees, give me the answer, but I'll discuss it with them. And then I'll go and row and come up with the answer. And they haven't all been right, but we've gotten more right than we've gotten wrong.
Okay. Next question. If you could refer any book that contributed to your success, what would it be?
Jeez. Okay, I'll give you a great example how my mind works. It'd be a book called In the Thin Air by John Krakauer. It's about climbing Mount Everest. And it's a story of survival. And it's just this, I read it in summertime, I remember, and I had a coat on. I was freezing because it was talking about the Khumbu ice fields. It was talking about getting to the death zone. And the analogy to business was profound to me. How do we make it down off this mountain? How do we get to the top and get off of it? Because failure is not an option, certainly not on Everest. And so it rocked my world. I remember reading it. I read a book recently, a couple years ago, called Shoe Dog by Phil Knight. If you think the story of Nike was just one of complete success, you're wrong, man. He came so close to losing it a couple of times. I mean, fingernails to losing it. Same with Howard Schultz at Starbucks. Those are the kind of books you got to read to embolden you to say, okay, they've been there. They didn't panic. We're going to get through this. Another book I read last year that was profound to me was Walter Isaacson's biography of Leonardo da Vinci. Jesus, there's not been another human being walk the planet like that guy. Read the book, man. You'll be a better person for understanding what that cat was all about.
Okay. Anybody else have any other questions? Otherwise, we're coming up on the hour. We try to keep these to about an hour. Anything that you want to summarize? I will say one last thing. If anybody has questions and want to actually reach out to Jim directly, you can send me a message and I'll put you in touch.
If they don't, Matt, one of the things that you're thinking back on it, they can call me, they can call Timmy, they can call Dan Adamson, they can call Mike Blavatsky. Mike's one of those Harvard MBAs. He'll take their call. You guys have 4 magic words that will get you into these guys. And those 4 magic words are SIG-Ep, Arizona Beta. We'll take the call, man, because that's the bond we made the night we were activated.
That's great. Well,
Nice
hey,
job, Vinny.
wait, somebody had something. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, Jimmy, nice job. Very nice job.
Thank you, Timmy.
That was amazing, V.
Absolutely. So,
Thank
you know, I've recorded it. We're going to put it up on the website. We'll put it up on the social media, and we'll send out an email so others will see it. Thanks for giving up your hour tonight, alums and undergrads for joining. Thanks for giving us the hour, and have a good night.
Thank you, guys.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks all you guys.
Take care,
Bye.
Jimmy.
Thank you, Timmy.